I love the Metroid series. I love Metroid Prime in particular. Metroid Prime, to me, is a masterpiece, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. And the trilogy is just one of the best trilogies of all time. So it kind of saddens me when I hear and I look into the numbers and the history for sales for the Metroid Prime series. It just, well, it's not terrible. It's nowhere near as good as Mario or Zelda, and I feel like it deserves to be, but it just isn't. When you look at Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, those games have raised the bar even greater than before. Nintendo reassessed the gaming foundations for both Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, and those games really have sort of changed the environment for their respective genres. So I'm kind of hoping Nintendo's going to do something similar for Metroid Prime as well. When I think about it, it's probably one of the reasons why we haven't seen Metroid Prime in such a long time. Nintendo probably, they don't focus on creating a Metroid Prime every generation because it doesn't really bring in the same amount of dough as Mario or Zelda, but I think they want it to. And I think, like Mario and Zelda, they're going to reassess the foundations for that franchise and make it better than ever before. So with Metroid Prime 4, I think there's a huge opportunity here. I think Metroid Prime 4 has the opportunity to reinvigorate the franchise, make it better than it ever has been, and when it comes out on the Nintendo Switch, hopefully next year, I think it's going to wow us and maybe even blow our minds. So then, what's going to be different? How is it going to be better? One of the ways I think it could very well be better is how we perceive the game world, how we operate through the game and progress, and well, a big factor in doing that is the Scan Visor. And the thing is, I actually think that the Scan Visor is broken, or rather, it could be way better. So that's what this video is all about, fixing the Scan Visor for Metroid Prime 4. Just a quick disclaimer, guys. I actually kind of recorded my thoughts for this idea a few weeks ago before I moved. So when you see the video, you may notice that I'm in a different room, different clothes, different set, and that's because I recorded this video weeks ago. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and as I said earlier, we're going to be focusing on how we can fix a Scan Visor in Metroid Prime 4. But I should note that we're not going to just try to fix a Scan Visor, but the other visors as well. So how can this be done? Is there even a problem with a visor? Is there anything that needs to be fixed? Yes, and I think in order to do this, we need to identify that issue. So let me give you an example. When you're playing Metroid Prime, right, and you're exploring the game world, you enter a room. You may see a few enemies, but you may also see a few boxes. You may see a few doors, a few power-ups, some lore on the wall. There's always these different things to scan, and if you're a completionist, you may want to find every single possible thing. But when there's all these different objects and pieces of information to find in every single game room, you may find yourself constantly switching between the combat visor and the scan visor all the time because you don't want to miss anything, and you want to make sure you understand everything as best as you can. So here's a problem: when you're always switching between visors, it can get a little taxing. It can kind of slow down the pace of gameplay, it can kind of decrease your engagement, and that's not a good thing. So then how can we fix this? I think the best way to fix it actually would be to minimize the amount of switching between visors. So how could this be done? Well, I think the best way they could do this is by combining both the combat and scan visor into one. How would this pan out? So let's say, for example, you're in the combat visor, right? I think it would work pretty much the same way it already has. However, when you're fighting an enemy and you lock onto that enemy, you're also simultaneously scanning that enemy. Once the enemy is entirely scanned, the narrator will then give you a brief description that may be out loud, or there'll be some sort of text blurb, and it'll tell you a little bit about the enemy. But you will also be granted the option to pause the game, go into your logbook, and get a more detailed description of the enemy so you can glean even more clues or hints as to how to beat it. And I think that would speed things up a lot and decrease the amount of switching, and you can always be focused on looking around the game world, enjoying the beauty, and being ready to fight enemies. But what about all the other objects like lore, power-ups, all those sorts of things? That's a lot of different things that you could potentially lock onto. Well, this is one way I think they could sort of mitigate that problem. They could offer a second button that's specifically for locking onto everything else aside from enemies. Like maybe they could use, LB, or not LB, but like the left bumper instead of, the trigger, and that way, and it would work, because guess what? The Switch has way more shoulder buttons than the Wii or the GameCube, and that would be an easy way to do it. But there's another potential issue with this. In the Scan Visor in previous Metroid games, there are tons and tons of symbols for every possible thing you could scan, and if all of this was available in the Combat Visor, it would clutter everything up and you wouldn't really have a good view of anything. So this is how they could fix it. Maybe they could go for a much more minimalistic approach but still give you the same amount of information. So maybe all those big giant colored symbols could be turned into little miniature colored circles that you could see right next to your reticule. It would be a very minimalistic design, but it wouldn't take away from the viewpoint that you have during the Combat Visor and still give you just enough information so you know what you're looking for, what to scan when you're, just exploring the game world. And this way, you will no longer need to switch between both this Combat Visor and the Scan Visor, and this would increase the pace of gameplay, make things a lot more engaging and a lot less nerve-wracking for those completionists. But I also said we'd be trying to come up with ways to fix the other visors, because I think the other visors also pose the same problem, because once you gain access to the X-ray visor, or the thermal visor, or the echo visor, you're going to feel compelled to check every single visor and every single room to make sure you don't miss any possible secret. And that can get kind of, nerve-wracking or annoying when you have to switch between 3 or 4 different visors for every single room. So how could they fix that? I don't think they should combine every single visor into the Combat Visor. That would be kind of annoying, because I feel like the ability to switch visors is one of the cool things about Metroid Prime. So how could they fix it? Well, what they could do is the same way we sort of have like a damage signal. So like there's on the left side of the screen, usually there's like a meter that tells you if you're too close to fire or a cliff or lightning thing that'll hurt you. They could have another meter that could tell you, oh, there's a heat signature nearby. Maybe you should check your X-ray visor or your thermal visor. Like if there's an X-ray signal, you could turn on your X-ray visor. If there's an echo signal, there's like too many sound waves, maybe the meter will be really high and you'll be like, oh, maybe I should check one of my visors to see what's going on here. And with that meter, you won't always feel like you constantly have to check every single room, but only when that meter suggests that there's something weird in the environment, and then you will feel compelled to check your visor. And this way, they can minimize the amount of switching between all the different visors significantly. And by doing all of this, guys, the pace of gameplay will be a lot faster, you'll be a lot more engaged with the game world, you can just focus on the beauty of the world, enjoying all of the smaller details, and just fighting enemies when they're available, but still you will have all of the access to the different visors and learning about the game world in that very detailed way with the Scan Visor. And by doing all of this, guys, I think the game will be a lot better for it, and I think it'll be a lot more inviting to a lot of other players without making it easier, just better, more streamlined, and more fun for a larger audience. The same way Breath of the Wild is for Zelda fans and other fans, and the same way Mario Odyssey is for, like, everyone. I think this would be a great fit, guys. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think my ideas for how they could fix the visors in Metroid Prime 4 make sense? Do you think there's a better way they could do it? Or do you think it doesn't need to be changed at all? I'm really curious what you guys think, so let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Bye.